This is winter, beginning of winter. Winter's not just a season of the year, it's a state of mind. Start somewhere around Thanksgiving, you begin to notice it's getting darker, and things can get dreary, and there's all this stuff you got to get done, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and all that stuff, and you can get down in the winter. I'm going to share with you some thinking about winter states of mind. Failure is something that comes up in the context of winter. You think about your own sins and sorrows and mistakes. I'll tell you about one of the great failures of all time that I know about. The man's name was John Pierpont, and he died of failure. 1866, more than 100 years ago, at age 81, he came to the end of his days as a government clerk in Washington, D.C., with a long stretch of personal defeats abrading his spirit. Things began well enough. He graduated from Yale, that other college, which his grandfather had helped found, and he chose education as his profession, thought he'd be a teacher. Some enthusiasm there, but he was a failure at school teaching. He was too easy on his students. So he turned to the legal world, thought, well, maybe he could be a lawyer, got some training, but he was a failure as a lawyer. He was too generous to his clients and too concerned about justice to take the cases that brought good fees, and so he thought, well, maybe he could run a store, so he became a dry goods merchant. But he was a failure as a businessman. He couldn't charge enough for his goods to make a profit, and he was too liberal with credit. So in the meantime, he began writing poetry. And though it was published, he didn't collect enough royalties to make a living, so he was a failure as a poet. And so, having fallen this far, he decided to become a minister. In order to be a minister, he went off to Harvard Divinity School. He was ordained as a minister at Hollis Street Church in Boston. But he had a position on prohibition that wasn't okay, and he was against slavery, and that got him crosswise with the influential members of his congregation. So they forced him to resign. He was a failure as a minister. So he turned to politics. Seemed like a safe enough place he could make some difference, and he was nominated actually for the governor to be the Abolition Party of Massachusetts, but he lost. Go ahead. But this guy was undaunted. He ran for Congress under the banner of the Free Soil Party, and he lost. He was a failure as a politician, but the Civil War came along, giving many opportunities for everyone. He volunteered as a chaplain of the 22nd Regiment of the Massachusetts Volunteers. 2 weeks later, he quit, having found the task too much of a strain, and it's no wonder. He was 76 years old, and he couldn't even make it as a chaplain. Someone found him a job, an obscure job in the back offices of the Treasury Department in Washington, and he finished out the last 5 years of his life as a menial file clerk. He wasn't very good at that either. His heart was not in it. So John Pierpont died of failure. He had accomplished nothing he set out to do or be. There's a small memorial stone to him. Words in the granite read, poet, preacher, philosopher, philanthropist, Mount Auburn Cemetery, Cambridge, Massachusetts. From where we stand now, in this distance of time, one might insist that he was not, in fact, a failure. His commitments to social justice, his desire to be a loving human being, his active engagement in the great issues of his times, these are not failures. And much of what he thought of as defeat, in fact, became success. Education was reformed and legal processes were improved. Credit laws were changed, and above all, slavery was abolished once and for all. But why am I telling you this? This is a story of many people of his time. Many 19th century reformers had similar lives, similar failures, similar successes. But in one very, very important sense, John Pierpont was not a failure. Every year, come winter, somewhere around the beginning of December, we celebrate his most magnificent success. Everyone carries in their hearts and minds a long life memorial to him. Nothing big. It's a song. It's not about Jesus, and it's not about angels, and it's not about Santa Claus. Just a terribly simple song about a joy of whizzing through the cold white dark of winter's gloom in a sleigh pulled by just one horse, accompanied friends, laughing, singing all the way. No more than that, and no less. Jingle Bells. Old John Pierpont wrote Jingle Bells. He wrote a song that stands for the simplest joys. Imagine to write a song that now 300, 400, 500 million people, who knows, around the world know. A song about something they've never done.
You made that
something
up.
they have to imagine. A song that every one of us, large and small, is willing to hoot out the moment the first lovely chords are struck. And the chord is struck not only in the piano, but in our spirit. That's not failure, let me tell you. That's not failure. One snowy afternoon, in deepest winter, John Pierpont penned the lines as a small gift for his family and friends and congregation, and in doing so, left behind a permanent gift of Christmas, the best kind, not the one under the tree. No, something invisible, something invincible, the one of joy, unspeakable joy. Something you can only sing about. Give me some Jingle Bells. Wherever you are, John Pierpont, thanks a lot. Winter. It's a story about one winter when I was really down. Everybody gets those holes in the winter. I'd kind of had it up to here with the coming of Christmas and the whole hoo-ha, and I was dug in way in the back lot of my life. Rain, wind, cold, winter's gloom. I had a things-to-do list that was long and growing like an unrestrained mold. My temper was short, and the newspapers, my bioindex was negative. The horoscope recommended caution in all things. And the Sunday newspaper had only stuff about dollars and death and destruction, like a litany. Tidings of comfort and joy, fa la, right? This holy hour of Lord's Day bliss was jarred by a pounding at the door. You have one of those now what kind of things going in your mind. So I opened it, resigned to accept whatever bad news was there. And I'm nonplussed, because what's standing there on my doorstep in this miserable afternoon is a very small person in a cheap Santa Claus mask carrying a large paper bag, and he shouts at me, "Trick or treat!" This is December. Trick or treat, he shouts. I'm tongue-tied. I stare at him. I don't know what to do with this. He shakes his bag at me. Trick or treat! So I take out my wallet and drop $1 in his bag. And the mask goes up, and it's this Asian kid with this lovely grin taking up most of his face. "Want to hear some carols?" he says. Halloween carols? Come on. I know this kid. He belongs to a family settled into the neighborhood by Quakers last year. Boat people, Vietnamese, refugees. He got into the spirit at Halloween. He was here with his brothers and sisters, and we filled their bags, and I guess he thought this was a good idea. His name is Hong Duck. He's maybe 8. It's funny, at Halloween, he looked like a wise man. He had a bathrobe on and a dish towel wrapped around his head. "Want to hear some caroling?" he hoots again. I nod. I suddenly have this vision of maybe 15 urchins out there in the bushes, and they're going to jump out and sing. So I say to him, "Sure, bring on the choir. Where's your choir?" "I'm it," says he. And he launches forth with an up-tempo chorus of Jingle Bells at full lung power. And this followed by an equally enthusiastic rendering of what I swear sounded like "Hark the Hairy Angels Sing." And finally, a soft voice, reverential singing of Silent Night. Head back, eyes closed. From the bottom of his heart, he poured out the last strains of Sleep in Heavenly Peace. Wet-eyed, dumbstruck by his performance, I pulled a $5 bill out of my wallet and dropped that into the paper bag, and in return, he produced from his pocket half a candy cane. Flashed his $10 grin, turned and ran from the porch, shouting over his shoulder, "God bless you," and "Trick or treat," and was gone. Hong Duck, the one-man Christmas choir, delivering the goods door to door. I confess that I am usually confused in winter about this Christmas thing that comes roaring down at us every year. It never has made a lot of sense to me. It's a little unreal. Ever since I got the word about Santa Claus, I've been a closet cynic at heart. Singing about riding in a one-horse sleigh is ludicrous. I've never seen one. I've never ridden in one. I've never roasted a chestnut by an open fire. I wouldn't know how to if I had to. And I hear that chestnuts are no big deal anyhow. I'm very suspicious of wandering wise men, and shepherds who spend their lives hanging around with sheep are a little strange. I have never seen an angel, and my experience with virgins is very limited. I'm not even very interested in the appearance of a newborn king. I'd just as soon settle for some other president, but that's another story. And babies and reindeer stink. I have been around both of them. And I'm told by people who've been there that the little town of Bethlehem, in fact, is a real pit. According to the tour guides, it ain't much to see. And to sing about these things, which is what we try to do every time this time of year come around. Sing about things that I've never wanted, I've never done. Dreaming of a white Christmas, which I've never seen. Christmas is unreal, and it's part of why I get down in the winter sometimes. I'm too old to believe in it. I'm too young to give up on it. I'm too cynical to get into it, and too needy to stay out of it. Trick or treat. Ah, perfect. I shut the door. I come nearly to hysteria. Laughter, tears, that funny feeling when you get that, you know, whether you want it or not, once again, Christmas has come to you. Right down the chimney of your midwinter hovel comes Saint Hong Duck. He is confused about the details, like me. but he is very clear about the spirit of the occasion. For him, it's one more strange American excuse to let go and celebrate, to throw yourself into some kind of holiday with all you have. Where's your choir? I said. I'm it, he says. Where's Christmas? I ask myself. Guess I'm it, comes the echo. Head back, eyes closed, voice raised in whatever song I can muster the courage to sing. I'm it. God, it is said, once sent a child upon a starry night that the world might know hope and joy. I'm not quite sure I believe that. I'm not quite sure I believe in all the baggage heaped upon that story during 2,000 years, but I am sure of something. I believe in Hong Duck. I believe in the power of the one-man Christmas choir shouting out of the darkness of winter, trick or treat, door to door. I don't know who or what's in him, but I know that I am tricked through the whimsical mischief of fate into joining the choir that sings of joy and hope. Through a child, I have been treated to Christmas. That's heavy stuff. I could use a little lightening up. Stockton, tell me that story again about the Rudolph
about the football player?
Yeah, give me the Rudolph story.
That's Walter's favorite story. About the football player that couldn't pass bonehead English. You remember that? Oh, no. Anyway, and the coach was very upset because if he didn't pass it, he wasn't going to be able to play. And so he took him to the professor, who was also a football fan, and he gave him a simple test. He said, now look, you answer this test, you got a half an hour, you pass it, you can play for the rest of the season. So Harry says, okay, I'm ready, you know, lay it on me, man. So he said, well, the question's very simple. He said, how many D's in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? You got a half an hour and I'll be back. So he worked on it and he came back in half an hour. He says, all right, Harry, time's up. How many D's in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? He said, 132. He said, 132? How did you get that? He said, it wasn't easy, you know. I got to count. It's dee-dee, 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 dee-dee. Heavy.
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 See, that's the twist of humor. Out of darkness and winter's gloom, we keep finding this ability to laugh or to make light of. That reminds me of an encounter I had with a lady some years ago, called me up on the phone. It was near Christmas time. She said, I'm really depressed. Do you ever get depressed? I said, depressed? I get depressions that take stepladders to get out of. And she said, so what do you do? And I said, well, my solace is not religion or yoga or rum or even deep sleep. It's Beethoven, as in Ludwig van. He's my ace in the hole. I put his symphony on, and I put the stereo phones down real tight, and I lie down on the floor first, and then the music comes on. And I think about old Mr. B while that music's coming on. He was pretty depressed. He's pretty unhappy. He moved around from place to place, trying to find the right place, but never did. His was a lousy love life. A rotten nephew worried him deeply. Mr. B wanted to be a virtuoso pianist, but he couldn't because he began to go deaf. It's usually bad news for pianists. By 1818, when he was 48, he was stone cold deaf, which makes it all the more amazing, I think to myself as I'm lying there on the floor, that he finished that magnificent Ninth Symphony 5 years later. Beethoven never heard it. Beethoven only thought it. So I lie there with my earphones on, wondering if it could have ever felt to Beethoven like it feels to me. It's like it sounds in my head. The crescendo rises and my sternum starts to vibrate, and by the time that final kettle drum with all those big F's come, I'm on my feet. I can't lie there on the floor. You have to get up with that kind of music. And I'm standing there, and the great Fulghum is waving his arms as the Mormon Tabernacle Choir and the Philadelphia Symphony are roaring at top, and I'm leading that and playing the kettle drum, and you have this sense of, man alive, God and all his angels, and hoorah. It's pretty hard be depressed when you hear that music, to know that out of that darkness and out of that despair came that. He had it in him. You know it. You know that final, lovely phrase. Hum it with me. La 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 give you some words. Listen to the words. You'll get them just like this. Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-E-I-O. On that farm he had a cow, E-I-E-I-E. Moo moo over here, moo moo here, and moo moo there, and moo 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 there. Let me finish. Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-E-I-O. I never can resist all that beauty and truth. I just can't imagine sitting there in my own rut, wringing my hands and feeling sorry for myself in the face of that music. Throwing those silly words in helps with the sense of foolishness and joy. I think it wipes out spiritual rot, and I think it also cures colds. So what's all this noise about winter and rain and bills and taxes, I say to me? Who needs this talk about failure and confusion and frustration? What's all this noise about life and people being no damned good? In the middle of oatmeal days, I find within Beethoven's music an irresistible affirmation. Out of his darkness came light. In the midst of his winter came the invincible sun that is within us all. So things are coming to an end, and in this book, it was on fire when I lay down it. I commented to the ending of things, and I wrote in these words that apply to tonight as well as the end of the book. Pretty soon now, I'm going to get into my going to bed ritual. It's not unlike yours will be, I suppose. Walking through the house, I will turn off the lights, check the latches on the door one more time, turn down the heat, stop by and check the refrigerator one last time to see if anything like chocolate ice cream has appeared there since 9 o'clock. And then, by automatic pilot in the dark, I will find my way up the stairs and into bed next to my sleeping wife. There's always a silent laugh at this moment. She wears a black eye shade, so it's kind of like getting into the sack with the Lone Ranger. But I always really liked the Lone Ranger, and I always say to myself, the faithful Indian Tonto is here. I don't say it out loud anymore, no one laughs, but I think it's my own dumb joke, and I go to bed amused, which is not such a bad way to go to bed, actually, even if it's on the note of a silly joke. Next, I'll do what you probably do. I get my pillows shoved around just the way I like them, and I set the alarm, and then I take a breath and lie back into that state of being between waking and sleeping. My daytime mind wants to work on the problems of the day, but I think to myself, no, I've done as well as I could do. This day was full, and tomorrow's work would just have to wait. In the meantime, what I need is sleep. Everyone else is asleep, why not me? And if I sleep well, the tasks of another day will take care of themselves. Sleep Fulghum, sleep, say I, and I do. Now, I know this is not exactly a bedtime prayer in the traditional sense, but it supposes peace through the night, supposes hope for a productive life the next day, and that's prayer enough, I suppose. This particular night, I will go to bed with the laughter in my mind. Sometimes think that maybe I should take the laughter out of my writing. Serious writing isn't supposed to have humor in it, so I think maybe we'll trim out the funny parts, but I also think not, and here's why. To get through this sweet life and see it realistically, you have to deal with a very large problem. There is a dark, evil, hopeless side to life that includes suffering and death and ultimately oblivion. Someday our earth is going to fall into the sun. That kind of thinking, nothing is really important. Nothing counts. And on the other side, the best of our humanity finds us determined to make life as meaningful now as possible. Now, to defy our fate, like old Beethoven. Everything matters when you think that way. Everything. And it's terribly easy to become immobilized between those two points of view, to see them both so clearly that one cannot decide what to do or to be. And laughter gives me the forward motion at such intersections. We are the only creatures that both laugh and weep, you know. I think it's because we are the only creatures that see the difference between the way things are and the amazing way they might become. Tears bring relief, and the laughter gets us up and on. Some years ago, I came across a phrase in Greek, asbestos hielos, unquenchable laughter. I traced it to Homer's Iliad, where it was used to describe the laughter of the gods. And that's my kind of laughter. And you know, he who laughs lasts. Good night, and sleep loose.